Let's go on a trip to Frozen Head State Park, nestled in the Cumberland Mountains in Wartburg, Tennessee. 24,000 acres of natural wilderness area with miles and miles of trails. While we're there, we'll walk and run mostly off of those trails in search of books hidden in the forest by a mad lad ex-runner turned race director. The festivities predefined will only cost you $1.60 and a license plate. Along the way, we'll even get to see an old abandoned prison, the home of a notorious prison escape. And the best part? We won't know the start time until 1 hour prior. This is what you don't know about the Barkley Marathons. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
And today, we want to talk to you about one of the most difficult ultra marathons ever created, the Barkley Marathons. In honor of this glorious race, this episode is being released around the time the race normally takes place, which is somewhere around the end of March to the beginning of April. That's part of the fun, is no one really knows when it starts, unless you're one of the 40 people selected to run in it. But we'll get to that. First, wanted to shout out some of the documentaries that inspired and informed this episode. There are a ton of them. A lot of the runners who have ran in the Barkley Marathons, not necessarily finished, but just ran in them, have documented their efforts on YouTube. There's a Netflix documentary, there's one on Amazon, but mostly self-produced videos about their individual efforts and their individual races. The one on Netflix and Amazon is called The Barkley Marathons, the race that eats its young, which you will soon find out to be true. Some of the YouTube channels are The Ginger Runner, Run Steep, Get High, Carl Sabe, and another one titled Barkley 100, the world's toughest race. Matt, does my trip sound like a good time or what?
All right, so I'm not gonna lie. The price, that's great. The nature is cool, although me and hiking trails and such, not the best things in the world. There's a prison, so there's some history there. I dig that. And the general idea of not knowing when things are going to start, it's just, sometime March, April, May, springy, right? I dig that too. That's my kind of just lackadaisical, we'll do it when it's time kind of stuff. But you got to this ultra part and ultra marathon. Not sure that that's my cup of tea. So you had me till there.
Until I mentioned the distance part of it, huh?
Yeah, because I know what a marathon is, and so an ultra, we start putting adjectives in front of marathon, and that's when it gets dicey.
Well, I'm glad you're excited. So, are you in for a treat or what? So, we'll get into it. Some of the background on the Barkley Marathons: James Earl Ray, who is the man who assassinated Martin Luther King Jr., he escaped from Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary with 6 other convicts in June of 1977. Now, this penitentiary borders the park that the race is held in Frozen Head State Park. So this story got a ton of publicity all over the local area, especially because of who it was. But all 7 men were able to escape, but their escape only lasted less than 3 days. When all 7 men were recaptured only 8 miles from the prison. They were gone almost 3 days and only made it 8 miles away from the prison. If that tells you anything about the terrain and the area that this prison is located.
They made 8 miles in 3 days. So, if you're going to escape from prison, maybe know where you are, if it's a good idea or not. In this case, clearly wasn't, because they were either out of shape or not very good at escaping. And to be honest, glad they got caught. So
So, local runner Gary Cantrell, also known as Lazarus Lake, I'm going to call him Laz for the remainder of the episode. That's just easier to say. Don't know where the nickname came from, though. He believed, after hearing the story, being a runner, that he could make it 100 miles in the mountains and the terrain around the prison. And so the race was born as a
Wow.
challenge. The race is actually named after Laz's longtime neighbor, Barry Barkley, who passed away a couple of years ago. But Barry was injured in Vietnam, ended up not being able to run, but he was always really, really enthusiastic about the sport, about running. So Laz, in honor of his good friend who couldn't run, couldn't participate, named this race after him.
That's just being a good friend. Thanks for being a friend. Like that's the way to do.
Yep. Laz may, by the end of this episode, you may be thinking Laz is a psychopath, which may also be true. But
I think anyone who runs 100 miles is on some level a psychopath.
that's
So
okay.
I don't need to be convinced of that,
That's fair.
uh, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm ready. I'm ready.
That's fair.
I'm already intrigued.
So there's a lot of little details. So we're not going to cover one particular running of the race per se. We're just going to give you an overall. Here's what the race is, where it comes from, what it's about, all the details. Okay, there's lots of YouTube documentaries, like I already explained. You can go watch them actually run the race. So the race first took place in 1986. It has been ran every year except two since then. It was not ran in the year 2000 for some sort of political reason, probably local political reason, like they have to get permits to be able to be in the park and off the trails and stuff, and those permits got revoked at the last minute and they weren't able to run the race. And then, of course, in 2020, they canceled the race because COVID.
Gosh.
Registration for this race is limited to only 40 runners, 40 to 45 runners per year. The application process is secret. But what we do know about it, what former runners have told us, is that it includes a letter to Laz telling him why you should be allowed to run in the Barkley. So it could include things like, I've championed this race, I've won that race, I've completed this in this time, and all these sorts of things. And then Laz decides whether or not you get in. Apparently, hundreds of runners apply every year, and he only chooses 40 to 45. If you're accepted, though, the runner receives a letter of condolence from Laz, basically saying, I'm sorry you have to participate. Just sad. Just so sad.
I love this already. I love it. The sarcasm. Like, thanks for applying. You've made it. Now your life is going to be miserable. Congratulations. Actually, condolences. I love that. I love that. The sarcasm is there.
It's so quirky. Like this guy's personality is so funny, and it won't come out with us telling you about it. Go watch these Netflix documentaries and the YouTube documentaries and stuff. You'll understand. So, if you're a Barkley virgin, or if it's your first time running the race, you have to bring a license plate from your home state or country or province or wherever you're from. And if you are a returning non-finisher, your additional fee includes some sort of clothing article like white button-up shirts, socks, a flannel shirt, etc. That's decided by Laz, just whatever he needs that year. Returning runners are required to just bring him stuff so he doesn't have to go shopping, I guess. Previous finishers, though, have to include a pack of cigarettes in their fee. So the cigarettes come in handy. He's a smoker, and that will make more sense as to why he needs cigarettes a little bit farther down. But just again, so quirky.
So my man is basically getting his shopping done every year. And the license plate thing, is that just a memorabilia? Like, I've had people from these states, this many, like it's just kind of a thing that he does, like, because I dig that. That's kind of cool. I like that part of it.
Yep, yeah. I think it's more of a memorabilia thing, and he ties them all together and hangs them up around the campsite for every year. And again, the pictures and the videos you can find on the internet, it's just dozens of license plates from every state, provinces in Canada, and countries overseas. It's actually pretty cool. Like they turn this whole big campsite into this powwow for a few days. It's actually really cool to watch.
Yeah, that's a fun folk art kind of thing, just to use license plates as banners and things like. I like that. That's cool. I can dig that.
Laz determines who gets bib number 1. He gives that bib to the person he believes is least likely to finish one lap of the race. So he allows one person in who he absolutely knows is not going to be able to finish even one lap, and he calls them the human sacrifice. So he
No.
That was like entertainment for them, just for like knowing it's like, you're bib number 1, and with like this really creepy grin on his face, you know.
So two things. One, that's got to be like some weird summer camp kind of stuff. Like, you think you've made this elite club to run this race, and then you find out that you're basically the goat of the whole situation right before you begin. Like, you get there and you get bib 1. Second of all, that's just more sarcasm, because I know running isn't like this, but in racing, where numbers are a big deal, a lot of series give number 1 to the previous year's champion. Like, that's an honor to have the number 1. Some football teams, I think Michigan has a deal where like the player that wears number 1, or at least they used to, is like the best offensive player. So we're giving the GOAT number 1, and not like greatest of all time GOAT, just the worst runner. That's the sarcasm in all this is great.
It keeps going. As we originally stated, the start time is uncertain when you apply. You arrive on a particular day. The start time could be anywhere between midnight and noon the following day. How do you know when the race starts, you might ask? Well, at any time between midnight and noon, Laz blows into a conch shell, making like a horn type noise, and that is your 1 hour warning. That could be at 12:01 a.m. That could be at 10:30 a.m. But you don't know. So the sleep you get the night before the race is very limited. But you get your 1 hour warning when Laz blows into the conch shell, and then you have 1 hour to report to the infamous yellow gate. Which, if you've looked it on the internet at all for this race, there's this infamous yellow gate where the race starts and finishes. And Laz stands at this yellow gate and lights a cigarette. He doesn't say go. He checks his watch, puts a cigarette in his mouth, checks his watch, pulls his lighter out, checks his watch. And as soon as the cigarette is lit, that's how you know that the race has started.
I love it. So not a starter's gun, not go, just I'm lighting this cigarette. And so I'm sure that he knows what time the start is, but it does give this aura that he's just hanging out at camp, goes to bed whenever he wants to, wakes up in the middle of the night, maybe wakes up because he's got to pee, and he just, you know what, I'm ready. blows the conch shell like we're Vikings, and grabs a cigarette and gets ready to go. Like, there's this aura of it's just whatever. Well, it's when I feel like it. Kind of now. Yep, I love it.
Basically.
I'm going to keep saying I love it because this is just so weird.
So, or skip ahead a little bit, but of course, once you start the race, every time a person returns to camp to drop out or to not finish a loop in the allotted time or whatever, someone plays taps on a bugle for you every single time for every person. And the race is not over until the last runner comes back to camp, or at the 60-hour mark, whichever happens first, I guess.
Man, what an event already. And we don't even know like what it is, but like just the pomp and circumstance for this it's like, I don't know, it's like the redneck. I was going to say it's like the redneck Daytona 500, but I guess there already is one of those. I was
going to say, hold up. That's
the Canadian NHL. Wait
a
minute. Yeah, but it's, I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. Like, there's all this ceremony and then we're going to go, but it's all weird stuff. Like, why any of this is happening just is amazing.
Just because. So to complete the race, runners must complete 5 loops. So basically laps. These laps or loops are considered to be about 20 miles long. Lots of the runners tend to believe that each lap is more like a marathon, so more like 26 miles. But GPS is not allowed. Watches aren't allowed, or smartwatches, I should say, are not allowed. Phones are not allowed. Nothing, no electronics are allowed on the course. So there's really no way to know, but it's just up to Laz where you go, I guess. The course includes approximately 130,000 feet of elevation gain and descent, which would be like starting at sea level, climbing Everest, descending Everest, and then climbing and descending it again in 60 hours, which is.
And there's 5 of these loops?
Mm-hmm. It's 130,000 feet of elevation gain and descent for all 100 to 130 miles, if you get that far.
Okay, so that like not each loop is 130
No,
miles.
no.
Or 130,000 feet. Okay. I was like, man, we're doing like Everest every
straight
day.
up. Yeah, that's like straight up. That would be bad.
Okay, but still, 5 loops, and that's total. So we're over the course of a day, we're climbing Everest, and we're coming back down and doing it again. We're doing it twice. Is that what you're saying?
So it's over 60 hours you have to complete these 5 loops, and on average, the 5 loops combined include 130,000 feet of gain and descent. So if you complete all 5 loops, that's about what you will have done.
Yeah. My goodness.
That's a lot.
That's tough. That's tough to hike.
Yeah.
In a week or two.
Back to the Barkley course itself, it changes when Laz thinks that it's too easy, and he'll add a book. When I say add a book, I'll get to that in a minute, but he'll either add a book, he'll make the route longer, he'll do something to make it more complicated to try and increase the difficulty level so that less people finish. 12 hours are given to finish each loop, which adds up to the 60-hour total. You have to, from the start of each loop, you have to navigate the woods, mostly off trail, and you have to find literal paperback books that are hidden in the forest. And depending on your bib number, that is the page number of the book you physically tear out of the book and you bring it with you. I think the most recent running of the Barkley, there were 14 books that you have to find. So you have to navigate your way. You have to take your map that you basically hand draw, because they don't give you a master map. There is a single master map in base camp the day before the race starts. You have to take your personal map and make your marks on that, because you can't physically move the master map either. It's like put out on a table, and then you have to take yours and mark the book locations based on the master, and then navigate your way through the woods with the map and compass at daylight, darkness, rain. It snows, there's fog because you're in the mountains, and you have to do all of this and find all these books that are hidden in the forest. You have to tear out the correct page. So like after a while, if you get sleepy or delirious or hallucinating or whatever, you tear out the wrong page number, and you get back. Even if you get back to camping time, it doesn't count. You have to tear out your page number based on the bib number that you're given. And in order to complete your loop, you show back up at camp, touch the yellow gate, Laz, count your page numbers, make sure they're all right, and then you can take a break. But within that 12-hour time frame, you have to complete your loop and then take whatever break you want and then start your next loop. So for numbers' sake, you finish the first loop in 9 hours. In theory, you have 3 more hours before you have to start the next one, or it doesn't count. But that time rolls over. So you want to do it quickly, because if you have a daylight loop, or mostly daylight loop, your next one's going to be in the dark, and you want to give yourself more time to finish that loop. So you have to finish the second loop by hour 24. You have to finish the third loop by hour 36, and so on.
So I wonder if there's any rule. You finish your first loop and you've got 3 hours to spare. Can you take your sleeping bag, drag it slightly past the beginning of the next loop, and take your 3-hour, 6-hour nap and then keep trucking? I wonder if that's a thing. Probably not.
That would not be a thing. Everybody's sitting at the yellow gate, and they probably wouldn't allow you to start the loop until you're ready to actually start the loop. There, people have laid down on the side of the mountain and taken a nap, during the
loop.
Tired, in the middle of the night or something. But yeah, you have to do it quick. Like the fastest finishers finish the first loop in 8 or 9 hours if you're lucky. But then your next loop at nighttime, it could drop to 30 degrees and it could be snowing. And if they don't finish the second loop until hour 13. So then you got a
Right,
lot of
because
time
you're
to make
just
up.
dragging. Yeah. So do you find if there are 14 books, do you find a page, you have to find all 14 books
Yes.
each loop?
Yes.
So you're essentially running kind of like gate to gate.
Yeah.
Every mile and a half or so, roughly averaging somewhere around a mile and a half to get to each of these gates or each of these books. And then, okay, so you get back, got to beat the time, 12 hours. And then your next one is 12 hours from then.
Basically.
12 hours from, whatever, 12 hours along. Could be 15 hours along, but you got to get started and get back for that one. So
basically,
okay. So we're not getting any sleep. So we're talking about 5 days, not 5 days, talking about 2.5 days on next to zero sleep. So
next to zero, yeah. Some people do take like power naps in between, like after the second, after the third, but yeah, it's not like, hey, I'm going to lay down and take like a good night's sleep. You take an hour power nap at most.
So we're eating a lot of protein bars and like power bars and all kinds of stuff to stay awake and get any kind of nutrition possible.
Actually, some of the videos and documentaries that I watched, people are eating like hamburgers, people are eating bacon, people are drinking coffee. So, and there is some fruit involved, but it's not like they. I mean, you can carry water, you can carry a backpack, you can carry water, and you can carry snacks and stuff like that you can eat on the trail. But yeah, they're not eating like kale bowls or anything like super fancy. They're eating like heavy calorie rich foods because they just need that stuff to keep going.
You just need a book bag full of ground beef. Just load it up and you just reach back there with a spoon while you're running, just like shovel it in.
So
for
each new loop, you get a new bib number, right? And then the next time you go, because you ripped your previous page out of the book, you get a new bib number so that you can have a page there to rip every time. And each bib number is an odd number. Thought that was fitting because you have to be pretty odd to want to do something like this. So it seemed like, I don't know if Laz does that on purpose, but it seemed fitting to me.
Well, you got to have the odd number because the even number is on the back side. But he gives them the odd number and not the even number, which is hilarious.
Yep. And over time, depending on the difficulty of the course, the loop order has changed. So at one point, you could run the first 2 loops clockwise, the second 2 loops counterclockwise, and then the fifth one is by choice. Or at one point, it was opposite every time. So clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. The fifth loop will always be done solo and in opposite directions if more than one person gets to that point. So the first person to start their fifth loop can choose which direction they want to run it in. So whichever one they feel more comfortable, clockwise or counterclockwise based on feeling and navigation and such. The next person automatically has to go opposite. So as to keep the people from working together on the final loop. You can work together like in groups. The most successful people have done it with someone else as long as humanly possible, and then they'll break off for the last one. And you have to do it on your own because you're going in opposite directions. But that's he's mad. He's just mad. He
is. And I know there's somebody listening to this that's like, who cares what direction you're going? It's the same stuff. It's not. It's not. You try this. Anybody that's listening that thinks it's easy to go 2 different directions, drive somewhere new and then drive back without referencing any directions. It looks completely different on the way there and on the way back. It looks completely different in the daylight than it will at night. So just some people struggle with ordinary navigation going 2 different directions to somewhere and back. So it's not as easy as it sounds. So just that switching it up, you're going to go clockwise, now you're going to go counterclockwise, now you're going to go clockwise. That already is a nightmare because you can't get a routine.
Yeah.
It would seem like if you had a choice, you would choose the one you had just done, though. Like if you had done clockwise, you would choose clockwise again. unless you just really hated that route for some reason. It seems like you would choose that because you had just done it. But
well, it's only up, the direction that you go the fifth loop in is only up to the first person to start the fifth. So if there's two
Right.
people who start the fifth loop, the second person doesn't get to choose. The first person chooses what they feel comfortable with, and then you're stuck with the opposite. So there's incentive to starting your fifth loop, which if 40 people start the first loop, on average, 20 to 25 don't start the second one. So half the runners are out after the first loop anyway. There are times when the fastest runners complete, find all the books twice, finish 2 loops before some poor soul out in the woods makes it back to camp. They got lost. They've been out there for hours. I think one of the documentaries said that someone was out there for 32 hours.
So that was going to be a question I asked. It's 2021, and he doesn't allow them to have any technology, but does he use any technology? Is there any tracking in the bibs or anything at all? So once you leave that gate, nobody knows where anybody is until they show back up.
There's 2 places on the route that spectators or onlookers are allowed. It's at camp, at the start-finish line, and then at the 4th book location, I believe it is, at the top of a terrain feature called Rat Jaw. It's a really, really steep hill. It's open on one partial side, and that's the hill you have to climb to get to it. It's an old abandoned fire tower, and there's a book up there. That is a water refill station, and that is the only other place on the loop that spectators are allowed.
This is another world. So, okay, so people could be lost 32 hours, you said.
I think that was the number, yes. It was more than a day that some poor soul was out there, got completely lost. And every once in a while, somebody will have to, if they find their way to the highway, instead of walking back, because you don't know where you are, you're completely lost because no one's from that area. You don't live up there. So no one's from that area. And eventually you just find a highway and you hitchhike, and you have to you just hope someone picks you up and takes you back. It's wild. I did say earlier that GPS watches and devices and phones and stuff aren't allowed on the course. Laz did start giving the runners an $11 Timex watch each, and he set the time to the start time. So he would give out these watches within the hour that you have to start the race. And that was how you knew how much time was left in the race. It wasn't real time. It was race time. So it started, I think it starts at he sets it so that 00:00:00 is when the race would start, so that you could tell how much longer you had in the race. Of course, this is irrelevant for 99% of the people that start this race, because I don't know how many people have started it, but only 15 people have ever finished. Not won the race, not just been the first one. Only 15 people have ever finished. And
what year did they start again?
86.
Wow. So 33 races then, 15 people. So the average is less than one every other year. And he has to make it harder. That's not one finisher on average every other year is not strong enough for Laz. He needs to make it tougher. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Man.
Some famous terrain features. I just mentioned Rat Jaw. There's also part of the route they call the Testicle Spectacle, and a part of the route they call Checkmate Hill, amongst other ones, but those are some of the more popular ones. But Rat Jaw is probably the most popular because it is a gnarly hill leading up to the fire tower, and it's just covered in briars. I mean, these people are just beat all to, I can't even imagine the pain it feels just to do it once. It's unreal. But yeah, only 15 people have ever finished. Only 2 people have finished more than once. One person has finished 3 times, and that's it.
Sorry, what?
One person, Jared Campbell, I think he's a physicist. No, the Brett, the other finisher, Brett Mound, I think is how you say his name. He finished in 2011 and 2012. He's a physicist. Jared Campbell, I think, is an engineer. Campbell finished it 3 times, 2012, 2014, and 2016.
So my man's run it, or has finished it every other year, 12, 14, 16. So does it take him a year to recover? Like, did he win in 2012? And in 2013, he's like, I'm good. And then in 2014, he's like, I bet I could finish again. Because, like, the third time you show up to do this, like, why? Like, what are you doing? Well, you proved you could do it twice. You're just trying to be the best of
Yeah.
the best. Like, that's inhuman.
Well, people, I mean,
It's
you
inhuman.
know how people get when they get addicted to something, and runners get addicted to running, and
Sure.
they get addicted to the process and the training, and especially the most famous non-finisher. His name is Gary Robbins. He's from Canada. I said that right. And
A.
and he has one of the more popular YouTube documentaries that was done by the Ginger Runner. Go check that out. But that documents 2 attempts at finishing the Barkley. And to this day, he still has not finished the race. I think he's tried it 4 times.
Wow. Is there a time record for this?
Yes, there is a time record. Pretty sure it's always been a 60-hour race, but
And the distance has been roughly the same.
distance probably started as 20 miles per loop. It's probably longer as more people have finished. The current record is 52 hours, 3 minutes, and 8 seconds. So one poor soul finished this race with almost 8 hours to spare. And that is by far the record.
Yeah, he didn't take any breaks.
That is by far
because I mean that's only 4 hours before that last loop was started, technically. So he was really getting it.
Yep. The next closest record was set 4 years prior to that happening in 2012. The next fastest time is 55 hours and 42 minutes. So my man in 2012, Brett Mound, smoked it, and that was the year that 3 people finished. That was Brett Mound's second career finish. That was Jared Campbell, who has finished it 3 times. That was his first. And then the slowest recorded finish was also in 2012 of 59 hours, 41 minutes, and 21 seconds.
So less than 20 minutes to spare.
Yep.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
I am. And you know me, I'm sitting here trying to think of ways to cheat. And I'm sure Laz has too. Which is why there's books, even though like you don't have people that you don't know where the runners are, you don't have any spectators, so immediately you got to start thinking about cheating. But if you have the books scattered about, I'm sure maybe you could figure out a pattern on how to game the system and maybe cut out some distance. But I mean, you're on a mountain, so I can't imagine that the terrain would be welcoming to that. So I mean, it sounds ridiculous, like a lot of the things are, but at the same time, it's also lo-fi a way to prevent cheating. I mean, this is smart. I love it.
You have to find these books. If you don't find them all, you don't start the next one. So you have to do the whole thing. Like there's really no shortcut, because actually one of Gary Robbins's non-finishes, he touched the yellow gate at 60 hours and 6 seconds, but it turns out that he got all the pages on the 5th loop, but he cut 2 miles out of the end of the course and came back into camp from the wrong way, because that was the year in 2017, John Kelly chose to go one way, so Gary had to go the other, and Gary came back into camp. He touched the yellow gate 6 seconds after 60 hours, but he came back in from the wrong direction, so it didn't count. Well, he was over the time anyway, but even if he was 6 seconds sooner, it still wouldn't have counted because he didn't complete the loop the right way. He was 2 hours outside of camp, and he made a right instead of a left. So he basically cut 2 miles off of the end of the course.
So he did figure out a way to shortchange it a little bit.
He would not have been considered a finisher even if he had gotten there 6 seconds earlier, because it was multiple things. Even though he got all the pages, he didn't finish in time, and he came in from the wrong way. So like in the documentary, John Kelly finishes with like 30 minutes to spare, and he's sitting on one particular side of the gate. Everyone is standing behind the gate watching the direction that Gary's supposed to come from. And all of a sudden someone turns around and says, "Wait, there he is." And like he comes sprinting up the road from the wrong way. And everybody's like, "What in the world?" And he's like, I mean, he's almost dead. It's actually pretty emotional to watch it. It's crazy. But He's like, eventually he was able to catch his breath and say he cut 2 miles off the end of the course. He made a right instead of a left, or a left instead of a right. He knew it was risky. He just wanted to try it to see if he could make it, and like he just didn't. But
He wasn't going to make it if he didn't do it that way. So
right,
why not?
he's like, why not finish? Why
Yeah.
not try it? And speaking of not finishing the race, people refer to the Barkley as the hardest race to quit, because even after you've given up, you could still be 8 hours from camp. Like, just imagine being out there and you've given up. You've been out there for 12 hours and you've given up. You could have that long of a hike back. So what's the point in giving up? Like, you better finish. At least finish the loop.
And nobody's looking for you. Nobody's hunting for you.
They don't know where to look.
You've got to get back to camp. Yeah, man, I would suck at this race so bad.
A lot of it's
like not even the running part. Like the skill needed, you have to obviously be an ultra marathoner, but this isn't an ultra marathon on the ground at sea level, or even on a flat level in like, where it's relatively flat in a high elevation. This is hiking, but you have to do it, extreme distances. That's a different skill. That's not just ultra marathon, and you have to be able to navigate off of a map, which isn't everybody's strong suit.
I would call it speed orienteering, if anything. Like, because most of it you're probably not even running because the terrain's so bad. Like you're like rock climbing, mountain climbing, hiking, walking. Most of it you run when you can, but it's so tough. Someone wrote in 1996 in summary here that, quote, unlike other ultras in which race management and volunteers do their best to help as many runners as possible finish, Barkley is intentionally set up to minimize the number of finishers while still trying to keep it within the limits of possibility. Gary keeps making the course tougher when he thinks too many runners are finishing. He's mad. He's a mad lad. That's all you can say.
But at the end of the day, all in the name of proving that James Earl Jones was just a giant pansy.
You just said James Earl Jones.
No. Hey, James Earl Jones, you're not a giant pansy. You are an American treasure, a national icon. This is all in the name of proving that James Earl Ray is a giant pansy.
I was like, wait
which
a minute.
He is.
What do we have against James Earl Jones? What did he ever do?
No, James, you're the voice of everyone's childhood. You're Darth Vader. You're Mufasa. You're Moonlight Graham. You're everything. James Earl Ray, though, that guy sucks. So I'm glad we prove it with this absolute just asinine race in the middle of nowhere.
Oh God, that was funny.
It's so folky that it should be on ESPN or NBCSN. Like it should have its own week of coverage, but it can't because it would ruin it.
Yeah, the application process is secretive. There's no official website. Like, I mean, he's been doing it the same way since the beginning. And you have to applaud that because people find ways to cheat races. We talked about an earlier episode where this, of course, it was 120 years ago, but people cheated an Olympic marathon, and there's plenty of instances in it happening since then. But this is one that like there's no gaming it. You either have to be good, not just good. You have to be like the best, or don't even think about it. Like people are setting world records. Like one guy whose YouTube has a documentary about his attempt. He did finish 3 loops, I believe, but he set the world record, the trail record for running the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, but only finished 3 of these loops.
Man,
I mean, it's absolutely nutty. Like there's just so much here. I think a lot of it's mental because no sleep. You're out there by yourself most of the time. There's just a lot of time to mess something up, and the course is so tough that you can't just as very amateur runners, I will say, the two of us, when you do run, sometimes you can just zone out, right? you can just zone out and run, and your legs will move, and you'll stay upright as long as you don't run into something or you don't hit a pothole or something. And you can just run without thinking. There's no ability to do that in this race. You just can't move and not think here, and that's exhausting. And that's what kills people.
Just in the few races that I've been in, when things start to get strung out, and especially as slow as I am, you lose touch with people, because there are people behind me before anybody thinks that I'm. But if things start to get strung out over the course, and sometimes it can get lonely, and you start to worry if you actually took the right route on a street course that's been very carefully designed. So that's got to be a fear for them, that they know that they have to go off trail for some of this stuff to maybe just be. There has to be that notion in the back of your mind that you are lost. Like, something has to be telling you at any moment you could have done something wrong. You wrote the wrong mark down because you got there at whatever time. It was a weird time when you were jotting your map down or whatever. Something as simple as the fact that you change bib numbers every time and you are disoriented from your lack of sleep. I can see people picking up the wrong page number because they forget they don't think to look at the bib that's on their chest, or they look at it and they see a 2 as a 5 or something, and just 9 as a 6 as a 9, and just disorientedly pick up the wrong thing. I can see that wholeheartedly. So this is intentionally engineered to screw people up.
Yep, it's intentionally set up to minimize the number of finishers while still trying to keep it within the limits of possibility. It's unreal to think that the greatest runners in the world, most of them can't finish this race. Like Spartan ultra finishers, Tough Mudders, people setting world records on trail running, they can't do it. And I mean, there's something to be said for that, and it's addicting. That's why people keep coming back. That's why Jared Campbell is the only 3-time finisher. He might be more mad than the race director, but that's up for interpretation. Hope everyone enjoyed that, because I've been following this race for a few years now, and it never gets old. By the time this releases, somewhere in and around this release date, the race will be taking place. Keep a lookout for that if you're interested. There is a Twitter page of someone who live tweets the race. His name is Keith Dunn. He live tweets the Barkley from the camp. So if you're interested, he'll tell you when people are coming in, when people are leaving, when people are dropping out, and all that stuff. But it is a 2.5 day thing. So like, you get to go to bed and wake up and then realize everything that happened overnight, because they stay awake and they take care of it. So really interesting thing. I would love to go, but they severely limit the amount of spectators and stuff. So you really have to be on someone's crew to be there. So, well, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any ideas, we'd love to hear about it. Until then, until next time, peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Maybe one day we'll whip Matt into shape, and he'll try it one of these days, and then I'll get to be there. How does that sound? What do you think?
Yeah, clearly I'm the most likely one of the group here to do this. Clearly me, not you. Nope.
Okay, okay, it's fine.